This is kind of a weekend of the heart. We started on Friday, we had the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And then Saturday was the feast of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And our readings today talk about the things that are whispered into our hearts. The truth that is whispered in our hearts and that we need to proclaim on the mountaintops. This is we can you read some of these readings here and you can say, well, do you mean gossip that I hear I should be announcing on the mountaintop? No, not that at all. But those murmurings of the heart, that what we hear as we experience the love of God. And those are the things that we need to broadcast. And we talk here about a type of knowledge, a type of knowing. And, we talk about, it's easy for us to understand talking about knowledge about the world. If we're going to be a physicist or an engineer, we're going to learn about all the physical properties of the world. If we're going to study chemistry, we're going to do experiments, we're going to study how molecules combine and so forth. And, if we want to become very knowledgeable about those things, we go on and we get master's degrees and PhDs and so forth. By the time we get to a PhD, we should be able to create new information. We should be able to expand the field, take the field farther. We should know so much about it that we can then start developing the field. And we have a tendency to see that type of knowledge as superior to the knowledge of the heart, the truth of the heart. We have sometimes downplay our emotions. Oh, well, that's just, hormones and whatever going on in our body and our response to things that happen around us. And we can see that type of the world of emotion as being subordinate to the world of critical knowledge. And certainly that's what's going on in the world today. We want empirical truth. Well, truth is truth. But we want facts. We want things that we can test, that we can experiment on and see if they come out right. But we need to give leeway. We need to give way to the movements of the heart. And if you go beyond that kind of notion of the heart as emotion, the passion that we feel, the strong feelings that we can recognize that we see pain in others and we share their pain. We see other people's joy and we share that joy. When we start going down that path, we go down the path of being Christian and to living in God's world. We go down the path to being able to emote, to be able to feel with others, to be able to look into each other's eyes and see a child of God. That's when we know we're getting close to the way Christ sees us. We look at this the world of knowing and how we know things, and we don't want to discount where our feelings are taking us. But there's really another level of knowledge. And this is the thing, buddies, we start to get to the knowledge of the heart. You don't have to have an intellectual degree. You don't have to be a scholar. When we get to talking about the things of the heart, we can't even put them into words many times because it's just that thing you want to grab onto, but you can't really explain in words. There's a truth that flows underneath the heart. And we sometimes see that truth of the heart as being intangible and not of great value. We see people who are attached to that. We see people, even in seminary, the study of spirituality was seen as a lesser thing. If you didn't have the intellectual capacity to study theology, then you would study spirituality. When in truth, and a great theologian, Hans von Balthasar, said that he has to bow down to the spiritual leaders of the church. He was a great theologian, a great intellectual of the mid-1900s. And he said, no, I'm subordinate to those who are who take the spiritual journey. Those are the people who are really engaged in God's world. I see from my own experience that there's a step beyond just emotion of feeling. Feeling is a sign. Intellectual understanding is a sign, but they're all signs of something that's much deeper. Try to explain. When I say Mass, any given Mass that I say, it'll have a fragrance to it to me. That's the only way I can explain it. Different Masses have a different sense to them. I was out at St. Bartholomew's the other day for a funeral, and every time I'm at that place, there's a certain fragrance to it, a spiritual fragrance. Not better or worse, it's just unique, a unique sort of thing. Same thing if you engage with a person and you know them well and you see into their hearts, you say, you have a sense of them, that can't always be well defined in words. But, thank you. That there's an intangible aspect to this, that is then we translate into emotion. But a sense that I can feel, and sometimes I have a great sense of energy and excitement from saying a Mass, and sometimes I kind of lost when I'm saying a Mass. But to listen to those murmurings of the heart, which give us an understanding of the movement of God's hand in the world around us, to move past. We need to be able to quiet ourselves and to be able to sniff around and be able to appreciate those fragrances of the action of God in our lives and in the world. And then we can respond to it. And then we can share it. We can reflect it in our lives. And we have this opportunity to help others to enter into a deeper understanding. And for this, you don't have to have you don't have to be ordained to a particular ordination of the priesthood, or you don't need to have a degree, or you don't need to have, a certificate. This is something that every Christian has in the center of their heart, and it affects everybody the same way. I've worked with people who are in a home for people with learning disabilities, and very simple people, but you could see into their hearts. You could see who they were. You could see the Spirit of God living in them. And when we can tie into that world, when we can look past the superficial, if we can look past the headlines that we're reading in the newspapers, if we can look past all the craziness that's going on around us, and we can see each other as God sees us, then we have a love for each other that is enduring, that is deep and abounding. And once we see past, whether I like the person or I don't like the person, or they annoy me or they make me happy, you see past that to see the reality, the truth of the person as a child of God. And I think it's important, if we want to live out our Christian lives and to let our faith give meaning to our lives, to open up our hearts and minds, to listen carefully for the still small voice, and to see the hand of God moving through the world.